welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Apparently the people in this country are the stupidest people in the entire world. They fall for just about anything. And anything that does not make it into the mainstream media is relegated to conspiracy theory. So whenever you see a story that finally makes its way into the mainstream media, it causes wonderment and confusion. But nonetheless, it's something to be hailed because the vast majority of the mindless, dead American people will finally, hopefully, take notice of it. San Francisco Chronicle had this story, Rule by Fear or Rule by Law, where they finally exposed something that people have been talking about on the internet and through alternative media for years. For years. But finally, conspiracy theory has been shown to be fact by a mainstream media outlet. Of course, I don't hear very much about it from any other mainstream media outlets, but why should I be fucking surprised? They started off with a very nice quote from Winston Churchill, November 21st, 1943. Remember, this is from San Francisco Chronicle, Rule by Fear, Rule by Law, by Louis Seller and Dan Hamburg, from Monday, February 4th, 2008. And the quote from Winston Churchill: "The power of the executive to cast a man into prison without formulating any charge known to the law, and particularly to deny him the judgment of his peers, is in the highest degree odious, and is the foundation of all totalitarian government, whether Nazi or communist." End quote. And I might add, whether you're in the land of the supposed free and the supposed brave here in the United States of America. So just some highlights. Since 9/11, seemingly without notice, the American federal government has assumed the authority to institute martial law, arrest a wide swath of dissidents, citizen and non-citizen alike, and detain people without legal or constitutional recourse in the event of, quote, "an emergency influx of immigrants in the U.S., or to support the rapid development of new programs," end quote. Well, it goes on to report how the government has entered into a series of single bid contracts with Halliburton subsidiary Kellogg Brown and Root to build detention camps at undisclosed locations within the United States. The government has also contracted with several companies to build thousands of rail cars, some reportedly equipped with shackles, ostensibly to transport detainees. This is part of Homeland Security plan entitled Endgame, which sets as its goal the removal of, quote, "all removable aliens," end quote, and, quote unquote, "potential terrorists." That's me, I guess, and you probably too. Well, this leads us to the Violent Radicalization and Homegrown Terrorism Prevention Act of 2007, H.R. 1955, which passed the House by the lopsided vote of 404 to 6, 404 to 6, which would set up a commission to, quote, "examine and report upon the facts and causes," quote, end quote, "of so-called violent radicalism and extremist ideology, then make legislative recommendations on combating it." A new wave of terrorism, homegrown in the USA, by you and me. Conspiracy truly does go mainstream. Hopefully some of you will wake up and take notice. This is something that I've known about for a long time because I bothered to take a little bit of time to look. I'm not smarter than you. I'm not better than you. I'm nobody. This information is available. Look at it. Don't just throw it off into a drawer somewhere and ignore it. Take some time to try to contact your congressman to vote down H.R. 1955, and while you're at it, tell them to stop the FISA law, especially with the retroactive telecom immunity provision provision which is in it from the Senate. All of these things, when taken together, are merely more ways in which power in this administration is shifted from Congress, the Supreme Court, the other branches of government, and coalesce into the executive branch, where we have nothing but an exact replica of an empire with a dictatorial emperor as its head, who rules by decree and tells people they can't even see the documents that give him the power to do what he does. They can't even know what the law says. He denies access to the very documents that give him the power to do the things that he does to Congress. And he wants to create more fear-mongering, and I'm talking about the president here, more fear-mongering and the potential of terrorist attacks in this country in order to coerce Congress to pass its hideous bill. More power in the hands of the executive. Soon there will be no distinction between the U.S. president and the dying emperors of Rome. None whatsoever. Both will have the same dictatorial powers. Both will be able to decide who is thrown into jail when and why, and if any charges will ever be brought against them. So just like Nero threw Christians to the lions, President Bush can throw just about anybody into prison, have them tortured, locked up in a FEMA detention camp, carried around the country in shackled rail cars, all on a whim, just because he can. And if someone comes up to him and says, "Mr. President, this surely must be against the Constitution or the law," he'll say, "I have the authority, it's right here in these papers. Unfortunately, I can't show them to you." What a fucking mess. This is the country we live in. Congratulations, everybody. We've all arrived. We've all arrived. One final couple little bits of information about the beef recall, the possibility of mad cow disease. If there ever was a good time to consider becoming vegetarian or vegan, now is it. After seeing the video of some of the activities of these people, it makes me sick. I'm not against eating meat, not at all. But what I am against is cruelty committed on such a blatant fashion by these employees who poked and prodded and moved these downer cows with forklifts and put this meat into the food supply of this country, most notably to schools where kids are going to be the most affected. Are we going to see down the road, 20 or 30 years from now, a bunch of senile 30 or 40-year-olds who are suffering from Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease or its variant, from mad cow tainted beef that they ate in school? Another thing to be thankful for by this government. This is what deregulation gets us. No protection whatsoever. Thank you.